I'm old enough to remember a time when shoot interviews were a big thing. VHS tapes that were 4 hours long and most likely bootlegged from somebody else's copy. The honky tonk man talking about things that WWE didn't want you to hear about, or more likely, just the people that he hates that week. The Iron Sheik shouting about how he will break our backs and make us humble, and perhaps most famously, Jim Cornette doing that face. But since the advent of podcast and every wrestler in the world having a podcast, shoot interviews don't mean quite so much anymore. When you leave WWE, you give an interview with Chris Jericho or Chris Van Vliet, or presumably a different Canadian that is also called Chris, but often it feels like it's the same stories getting told, but from different perspectives. Nothing feels quite explosive anymore. But that's not to say there haven't been some explosive shoot interviews in 2020. No siree. You see, in April, WWE cut a lot of their talent in a very controversial move, which means there was a lot of talent who had a lot of time to do a lot of podcasts. And as such, we got some real gems, a real inside look into the working hive mind of WWE and the mind of Vince McMahon, as well as some bits about AEW and the indies. I'm Luke Owen. Please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to WrestleTalk for more great content like this. Let's look at 10 explosive shoot interviews from 2020. Number 10, Vince doesn't have the touch. Matt Hardy decided not to re-sign with WWE back in February. Do you remember February? We all sat together in massive crowds at wrestling shows, and it now feels totally alien. His WWE run wasn't the barnstormer we all thought it would be. Matt had reinvented himself on the indies and became the hottest act in wrestling with the broken Matt Hardy character. You could not move for delete chance in 2015. And then he and his brother Jeff re-signed with WWE in 2016 and just became the Hardy Boys again for nostalgia pops. Oh dear. He did eventually get to be woken Matt Hardy, but it didn't quite click, and perhaps the reason it didn't click was because Vince McMahon is out of touch. Hardy appeared on Talk is Jericho, where he talked about the Ultimate Deletion match that closed Raw on March 20th, 2018, and noted that Vince was not only not a fan of it, but if it was a hit, then maybe he might be past it.
But like, he watched it in the production meeting, and a few people in there had watched it already. But after it was over and ended, everybody like clapped and stood up, and he was just kind of like looking around, and he told a couple people, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I mean, if it does good, if it does a number, then I'm truly out of touch. I think he said that. You know, it kept the audience over 3 million viewers, which was cool.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
they would love that now.
You know, right?
Nobody gets 3 million views.
You know,
now.
so it still it did okay.
I mean, it was a hit. And yet, Vince McMahon is still heading up the creative. Maybe it's the kids who are wrong. Number 10, the WWE tag titles are so bad that no one wants them. FTR, formerly The Revival in WWE, had been looking to leave for quite some time and finally got their release in April, actually before all the pandemic firings. One of the reasons they wanted to leave was because WWE, for whatever reason, doesn't like tag team wrestling. And when I say WWE, I mean Vince McMahon doesn't like tag team wrestling. They don't treat the titles seriously, they don't really feature them, and they keep breaking teams up left, right, and center. Cash Wheeler on Talk is Jericho said of an actual child winning the tag titles,
"This has nothing to do, nothing against Braun. I think Braun's a great guy. I get along with him really well. But, like, he had steamrolled the entire tag team division, and then a 10-year-old or whatever won the tag titles at WrestleMania.
Right.
And then no tag teams were featured on SummerSlam until the last minute. They added the women's tag titles, which I'm all for. It's just it was so last minute that like people didn't even know."
But perhaps the most damning of things to say of WWE's tag team division is that they, a tag team, did not want to win the tag team titles.
But we had the victory that night against Lucha House Party, and we knew that the tag titles were in our immediate future. And that's when we asked, because we wanted to make a point like, hey, we know things are going decent for us. They're going well, all things considered, but we're not happy. Like, the tag team titles, they don't really mean anything. Like, they are so much of an afterthought that I would rather just lose to the champions every single night for the rest of my career as opposed to actually hold them, because they're just going to be, it's going to be chalked up as a failure of a title run.
The tag scene in WWE has only gotten worse since FTR left, with that never-ending feud between Street Profits and Angel Garza and Andrade, the nonsense with the Viking Raiders. I'm not even sure who the SmackDown tag champs are anymore. It's the Street Profits! Oh, yeah, they did that whole belt-swapping thing, didn't they? I guess Cash Wheeler had a point. Number 8, WWE is Augustus Gloop. WWE have had a lot of criticisms leveled against them in 2020, many of which stem around their handling of a certain global pandemic. But one of the biggest bones of contention is the banning of their talent using Twitch and Cameo. Despite calling their wrestlers independent contractors, they sure as don't treat them as such. Just ask Zelina Vega. Augustus Gloop was a big greedy nincompoop, and Andrew Yang feels WWE are quite similar. If you're not aware, Andrew Yang was a former presidential candidate for the Democrats and is hopeful, at least at the time of this recording, to be part of President-elect Joe Biden's new cabinet. And if he does get that seat, he's already said that he's going to target WWE for their definition of independent contractor. Chris Van Vliet had a fantastic interview with Andrew Yang where he spoke about this topic, saying,
"It infuriated me because I know that the WWE has been trying to play it both ways for years, where they're saying on one hand, can't do anything without our say-so, we own you, but you're an independent contractor and we have nothing to do with your health, retirement, any of the benefits you get that would accrue to an employee."
And he then went as far as to call WWE greedy.
The McMahons have made so much money. Like, they have enough money where they're like investing in these, like football leagues and whatnot. And then the XFL failed again. It's like, so if you're a wrestler breaking your back, and then the WWE is like, oh, we can't afford you. You're fired. It's like, well, you probably could have afforded me if you could afford to lose tens of millions on that debacle. And so that the affordability argument does not apply to the WWE in a way that it applies to every other firm. If you look at AEW, I have a feeling their economics are real. But the WWE does not have those constraints anymore because it's a public company. The company's worth $3.3 billion. And so if your company's worth $3.3 billion and you're mistreating workers, I mean, that's just shameful. Really, it's shameful. There was a point in the distant past where you could have made a legitimate argument based upon cost, but now you can't. Now it's just plain greed. So we can all see it.
Say what you really mean there, Mr. Yang. This could be a turning point for the wrestling industry and an interview that could change the very fabric of how it all works. One to keep your eye on. Number 7, the son of a Wolverine. There aren't many names in WWE that are more controversial than Chris Benoit, who in 2007 murdered his wife and child over the course of a weekend and took his own life. It was a moment that shook the wrestling world to its very core, and the effects of the event still hold strong today. Vice's brilliant Dark Side of the Ring opened their second season with a 2-part special on Benoit this year, and it made me cry a whole hell of a lot, and I would really recommend that you check it out. Chris Benoit's son, David Benoit, featured on those episodes talking very openly about his father and his crimes. And in an interview with Chris Van Vliet, he interestingly brought up his fledgling wrestling career and how he doesn't want to shy away from his family name and wrestle as Chris Benoit Jr.
Well, I don't own his name yet.
Isn't that just his name though?
Yeah, I have his middle name. I can legally use it if I wanted to.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You're David Chris Benoit or Christopher Benoit?
Yeah.
Wow.
I could legally use it. They can't come after me, so.
That's true.
Yeah.
Do you think you'd ever wrestle
Yeah.
as Chris Benoit?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Not as David?
No.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I think it'd be cool.
Or would you be Chris Benoit Jr.?
Yeah.
This is interesting.
Yeah, man. I got the tights and it says
Your
Benoit
tights? Okay.
with the claw.
Listen, I'm happy for David Benoit, I really am, but I'm not sure this is something that is ever going to get a positive reaction. The Benoit double murder suicide is one of the darkest days in wrestling history. I don't know if we want constant reminders. Number 6, a very, very bad Rusev Day. WWE have missed the ball on a lot of talent over the years, and perhaps he's one of the biggest. You see, there's a period of time when nothing, and I do mean nothing, was as over as Rusev Day. So what did WWE do? They squashed it, broke the team up, and released Miro in the early days of a pandemic. The pandemic actually plays a part in Miro's final days of WWE, as he told Le Champion on Talk Is Jericho that he feels his anger towards WWE making talent work when every other sport and the whole world was shutting down is what got him fired. He says in the interview that he felt the firing was coming.
I was getting some of the boys around because we were not okay about this, how everybody was treated in the pandemic situation. We felt scared to go to work. And once again, it was probably 10 of us talking. Somebody leaked it to the office. From us 10 people, they were talking. Somebody leaked it to the office and to the dirt sheets. And once that happened, I knew right away they're gonna fire me because they're gonna blame it all on me, of course.
Of course, right? Yeah.
Because I'm the guy. But it doesn't matter. They fired me. I lashed out because I think we're on the path of doing something good. Because I do wanted to protect the boys. We all wanted to protect the boys and the girls. They didn't work out, and that's why I felt like they cut me underneath because I was just so angry.
An angry man? You seem so friendly on Twitch. Number 5, come sail away with Flair. Charlotte Flair winning the Royal Rumble made a lot of us groan, but Charlotte Flair going against Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania made a lot of us excited, and Flair winning that match split opinions. Those who felt it could be really interesting for the Queen to return to NXT and have great matches with their great talent, and those who thought it would be a big pile of ironic, as there were no involved, apart from the in Raw Creative, of course. It's since come out that NXT had to run all of their ideas past Raw Creative and they were always shut down. What that meant is that Charlotte Flair's run as NXT Women's Champion in 2020 was beating a lot of that great talent and not putting anyone over. And she told Lillian Garcia on Chasing Glory that this loss was the start of her downfall.
I'm not really too sure. It did feel like that though. I definitely have gone through a stage where I did start losing the confidence in myself because I just wasn't portrayed the same way that I was, you know. I started even now I'm still slowly building myself back up from it. My confidence definitely was tainted a little bit, which sucks because I try and keep it up and do my best all the time. I don't know if it was just something inside my head that just wasn't getting the picture, but I don't know, I got a little bit lost after that. But right now, I feel like I'm getting back on track, especially doing all the things that I've done. Building myself back up has been really, really hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's been very difficult and I've been very lost at times, but I've definitely found my track now and I'm getting back on it.
Yeah.
The old Rhea is back now, and it'll only be a matter of time before we start talking about her as one of the best talent in NXT again, and I cannot wait. Rhea Ripley rules. Number 4, running on diesel power. Full disclosure, I'd recorded this next segment earlier in December, just as we've done for all of these lists, so they're ready to go out over the holiday period. And part of me nearly took this out and replaced it with something else once we found out that Brody Lee had passed away. But listening back to the clip, it just made me smile because it made me think of all the great times we had with Brody Lee in AEW or Luke Harper in WWE. He was such a passionate man about this strange wrestling business, and hearing his voice again was oddly comforting to me. So this entry remains as it always was intended to be. Rest in peace, Brody Lee. Man, I really miss Brody Lee. It's only been a few days. I'm kind of just talking off the cuff now, but I still haven't quite processed this. I didn't know him personally. I don't think many of us did, but oh, man, I just miss him so much. Let's all be kinder to each other in 2021. Tell the people you're close with that you love them. I know I will. It's actually easy to forget, but Brody Lee left WWE in December last year after trying to get out of the company for most of 2018 and 19. The former Luke Harper's run in WWE can be summed up as was in a tag team with Eric Rowan. He tagged with Eric Rowan in NXT, tagged with him again on the main roster, then he wasn't in a team with Eric Rowan, then he was in a different team with Eric Rowan, then Creative had nothing for him, and they brought him back with a brilliant idea of putting him in a tag team with Eric Rowan. And then he left. To quote Bret Hart, frustrated isn't even the goddamn word for it. And Brody Lee revealed to the Demo God on Talk Is Jericho that WWE's other big creative plan for him wasn't a singles run, but to be in a team with a different person with a ginger beard.
I was going to be Sami Zayn's heater. And I was like, you know what? I go, man, that's exactly what I don't want to do. That's what I've done my entire career. I don't want to do that anymore.
Be a sidekick.
Yeah, I don't want to be behind anybody. I want to just go do my thing. And so then I said, but you know what? I'm going to make it work. We'll go from there and we'll figure it out. And 2 days later, I was supposed to debut on SmackDown, I believe, after Mania, and then it got canceled. Oh, we're not doing it. And I just said, okay, that's it.
The that's it that Lee is referring to is the moment he decided he was better off out of WWE, the moment he decided to quit. Frustrated indeed. Number 3, Trouble in Paradise already. Louis Dangoor has made a bit of a name for himself in the wrestling world this year with his interviews with the likes of Will Ospreay, Drew McIntyre, Brody Lee, and then AEW champion Jon Moxley, but in an interview with FTR, they dropped a pretty big bombshell. They were already unhappy with some of the booking they'd got in All Elite Wrestling. The pair debuted in the company after being released by WWE and immediately began a feud with the Young Bucks, a feud that had been building for the previous 4 years. It was the match wrestling fans wanted to see, and it was finally going to happen. But then AEW over-egged the pudding and turned the Bucks heel, I think? They super kicked Alex Marvez and Tony Schiavone, and then they sort of turned back face because no one wanted to see heel Young Bucks versus heel FTR for the tag titles, especially when they added the stipulation that this would be the last time the Bucks challenged for the belt. It was a bit of a mess, something FTR aired their grievances about to our own Nuggets.
We begged for 2 years for our release from WWE. And I'm not saying that with any bitterness. We begged for our release from WWE because of this match. The fans had always compared the two teams, contrasted the two teams, and wondered who was the best tag team in the world today, Young Bucks or FTR. And we knew that we had to have this match. We knew to be able to cement our legacy and continue to build our legacy. Go down as one of the greatest tag teams in history. We had to have this match, and we had to prove to the fans, to ourselves, to the Young Bucks, that we were the best. So this match is going to be a match that I'm too emotionally invested in, way too emotionally invested in. So that goes into your second part of the question, the build. Am I happy with the build? I think the build to this match could be a little bit better. Obviously, when you're an artist, you think that your piece is the most important piece in the whole museum. And I do believe that, and I don't know if that comes off selfish or not, but we believe that our piece in this AEW art is the most important art in the museum at Full Gear. So the build, I feel the build could have been a little bit better. I feel that we could have had a little more time devoted to this match and to make it a little more special. But with everything that is given to us, we all four put every ounce of effort into these next few weeks of building to make sure that it's just as important as we want it to come off. We want just as important as the fans had hoped it to be. And I think that at Full Gear, you're going to see quite possibly the greatest tag team match of all time.
There is some debate over which was better, FTR versus the Young Bucks or the Young Bucks versus Omega and Page, and you can debate that all you want in the comments, I'll even join in. But it is undeniable that the Full Gear match was amazing. The build was a bit shonky, but the final product was brilliant, sort of the opposite of Homer Simpson building a spice rack. Number 2, Bullet Club invades Madison Square Garden, or at least they could have done. Sticking with AEW for a moment, Matt Jackson revealed on the Good Brothers Talkin' Shopper Mania Patreon podcast that the original plan for the AEW Dynamite debut was to have Gallows and Anderson debut along with AJ Styles and have a Bullet Club reunion inside of Madison Square Garden. But in the end, the show didn't hail from Madison Square Garden. Gallows, Anderson, and AJ decided to stick with WWE, and we got Jake Hager instead, which worked out well for Styles, but not so good for the Machine Gun or the Big LG, as they were cut from WWE in April as part of their COVID spring clean. Now, we haven't got a clip of this podcast because it's behind a Patreon paywall, but we recommend you go behind that paywall so you can listen to it. Here's what Matt had to say. We were originally going to debut AEW Dynamite at Madison Square Garden. At the end of our match, the three of you were supposed to jump the guardrail and we were going to have a Bullet Club reunion. Obviously, things didn't work out like that. As for AJ Jackson revealed, he buzzed us and said, I just got too good an offer from WWE and I would never have got that money without you guys' offer. So I want to thank you. You're welcome, AJ. A Bullet Club reunion of that enormity certainly would have had a bigger impact than Jake Hager, but at least we are getting sort of a similar thing next year when Kenny Omega teams with the Good Brothers to take on Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns in Impact. It's only a matter of time before the Good Brothers take out Matt and Nick Jackson. Sadly, Uncle Alan won't be alongside them. Number 1, Vince McMahon has failed. Eric Young is an interesting WWE story. He debuted in NXT and immediately jumped into a main event position thanks to his excellent Sanity group with Nikki Cross, Alexander Wolf, and Sawyer Fulton, Killian Dane. They won the tag team straps and had an excellent War Games match in 2017, then got drafted to the main roster as a super hot act where they did nothing. According to reports, WWE had planned on doing a tag team version of Money in the Bank, which is why Sanity were called up, but those plans were scrapped and creative had nothing else for them, so they just kept them off TV for weeks on end, then they lost a bunch, got split up, and Eric Young became a job guy on Raw, then he got fired. And in a scathing interview with Chris Van Vliet, Eric Young said that Vince McMahon not only failed him, but he's failed the company. Now, this is quite a long clip to end on, but I do want to air the whole thing, and I recommend you check out the full interview over on Chris's channel.
With the WWE, it's just, I mean, I'm not the first guy to say this. Moxley talked about this a bunch when he left the company, and on much different circumstances. I mean, that's his choice. They were throwing a bunch of money in his way, and he chose to step away. And that's a powerful thing. And things that he said, it's stuff that, you know, is very real. It's a broken system. It's impossible to be creative. It's impossible to get ahead. It's impossible to feel like you have even a foothold in your career at all. Like a person that spent 20 plus years grinding, trying to make my reputation, and then it's basically dumped on by one person for no reason whatsoever. I mean, he looked up from his cell phone for 5 seconds and saw me doing something that maybe he didn't agree with in that moment, and that's the end of it. So it's the whole time you're there, it's you're just trying to fix other people's mistakes. That's what it feels like, and then that's an exhausting process. You're not having fun. There's no creativity. He wants everyone to be the same and do the same things and sell the same way, and that's not what pro wrestling is to me. And the last thing I'll say about it is this: if you have a 3-hour television show, pro wrestling television show, and you can't find something for me to do, then you're failing as a leader. Plain and simple. You failed your company. You failed the shareholders, you failed the fans, and you failed yourself. The reason I wasn't on the show was his choice, no one else's. You know, I think if you ask most of the people that work there, they would be in my corner. He was not in my corner, so I wasn't in the show. And I would tell him to his face, you failed as a leader. You can't find something for Eric Young to do. So it's it's a really weird place. You can't fully understand it until you're there.
And I think that's something that many people don't really put together. We can talk about WWE's backstage issues, creative problems, or the chaos in production meetings, but we have zero clue what it's actually like to be there and experience all of that firsthand. You can hear in Young's voice how frustrating it can be, and that is why shoot interviews like this are still popular. They're just not on 4-hour VHS tapes anymore. They're in nice bite-sized podcasts or videos like this on YouTube. You're welcome. So that's our list of explosive shoot interview comments from 2020. Which ones did you like? Which ones did you think were dumb? Please click the videos on screen for more great WrestleTalk content and subscribe for daily wrestling videos. I've been Luke Owen. Jam that jam.